then lastly, we have Meaux. Meaux will be taking the stance that that he agrees that humans are the cause of global climate change, and that if we do not make drastic change now, it's at the sake of our future generations. So we're going to go down the list, and we're going to start with and Meaux. We'll hear from you.
Hello, good evening, everybody. My name is Meaux, and I believe that climate change is a very, very important issue with drastic effects if we don't make changes right now. And if we don't make bold action right now, there could be very bad effects to our livelihoods and also the livelihoods to future generations. Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen. I have some things that I want to show you. I'm going to start here. Okay, there we go. Great. So first, some of the things I want to talk about first is the current state of our planet. And according to NASA, the Earth's temperature has risen by 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit. That's just 1 degree Celsius since the late 19th century. This may seem small, but the impact on the planet is significant. Extreme weather events such as heat waves, hurricanes, and droughts have become more frequent and more severe, causing billions of dollars of damage and loss of life. And to illustrate that, that's why I have this graph pulled up, right? This shows the global temperature anomaly, which is the difference between the current temperature and the average temperature between 1880 and 2021. And as you can see, the temperature anomaly has been increasing steadily over the past few decades, with the last decade being the warmest one on record, right? But it's not just the temperature is rising that we need to worry about, right? Climate change is also causing the sea levels to rise, which is very bad for low-lying areas and also coastal cities, which may eventually sink into the ocean. Yeah, the following graph that I'm going to show you, this shows the global rise of the sea level over the past century. And as you can see here, this one is from NASA. The sea level is rising at an alarming rate, and if we don't take action right now, they will continue to rise even faster in the future. So I just want to say so what can we do about this? I know Jack spoke about, sometimes this seems very alarming to mental health and whatnot, but I do think we need to take alarming actions, or bold actions to say rather, but they can be very simple. There's a huge reliance on fossil fuels. And then if we just transition to renewable energy sources, which we have already, we have solar panels, we have wind power, there's geothermal energy, and these things can help reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which is causing the temperature to rise. Yeah. And then to illustrate the potential benefits of transitioning to renewable energy, I have another graph here. This one is showing that the cost of renewable energy, like solar panels and then offshore and onshore wind, the cost of them have been going down. Where coal, fossil fuels, where the cost of those things have remained fairly steady, right? So that's why I wanted to bring this up. So it also makes economic sense, and it would help us save money if we transition the way that we were spending money, right? But yeah, I do believe it's a very pressing issue. And if we don't make changes right now, we're putting not only our livelihoods, but future generations at risk. And the graphs and the models I've presented today clearly show the severity of the situation, but they also demonstrate that there are solutions available that we can take action on. Yeah, but yeah, that's all I have for you, and thank you.
Thank you, Mo. I appreciate that. So all right, so let's start off. Let's go around and see if anybody has any comments that anyone to any of the introductions. Mo, got anything to say?
Yeah, I just want to say again that I do also agree with Jack that when I talk to some of the other environmentalist groups, I also get frustrated, with the alarmist language that's being used. I may use some of that here just because, I want to make my point clear, that I feel very passionate and important about it. But, sometimes it does feel very doomsday, and it seems that there's absolutely nothing that we can do, which I do want to stray away from. Yeah. And then also, it wasn't my intention to say that, that the rise in the temperature alone mean that things are going to be terrible. What I really meant to say that we need to take action right now. I really want to focus on the actions that we can take, as opposed to, kind of like what Freddie was saying, so that further down the line, things don't explode and get much worse than they can be if we just did something in our, in the next 10 years or so.
Thanks, Freddie. Appreciate that. All right. So let's get into the question phase. I thought that went well. First off, again, the first question that we're going to be exploring is, what evidence exists to support the claim that human activities such as burning of fossil fuels are causing global warming? So, and Mo, on to you, buddy.
Gotcha. So yeah, I personally feel that there's a lot of like scientific evidence, although I don't have the credentials that Jack may have, or Marvin either. I would love to see some of the charts that you have so I can take the time to like look at them and really understand them because they seem really fascinating. But here's what I have. So I'm going to show another chart. Yeah, so first I want to look at the concentrations of CO2, and some of the things I'm saying have been said already, but this is the information I wanted to share. Yeah, CO2 is a greenhouse gas that traps heat in the Earth's atmosphere.
Mo, I don't think, at least I can't see it.
Oh, you're right. Let me fix that. Thank you. I appreciate it. Can we all see it now?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Lovely. So this shows the concentrations of CO2 in the atmosphere over the past 800,000 years. And I did get this information from NASA. And if you can see, the CO2 concentrations have never been as high as they are today. And as Freddie was saying, there was a rapid increase since the Industrial Revolution. Secondly, I'm going to go back to this one. This is the one I showed in the introduction, just about the anomaly in temperature difference between the 1880 to 2022 and how it's been steadily increasing. And again, I want to point back to the point I made earlier that it's not just the temperature alone, but scientists have also been examining other climate indicators, such as, like Freddie was saying, sea level rise, ice cover, ocean temperatures, and they have also found, and they all point to the same conclusion, that the Earth is getting warmer and human activities are the primary cause, right? I showed the sea level rise chart before. Lastly, I just want us to examine the role of human activities in global warming. The following graph here shows the global temperature record over the past century, along with the contributing factors, right? Natural and human factors to the temperature change. And as you can see, natural factors such as solar radiation and volcanic activity, they have a relatively small impact on the temperature record, while human factors, as the greenhouse gas emissions, have a much larger impact on the temperature and how it's been rising since 1880. But yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Mo. Appreciate it, buddy. All right, sounds good. All right, let's go on to question number 2. Which is, what are the most effective strategies for reducing carbon emissions, such as renewable energy, energy efficiency, or carbon capture and storage? Obviously, there may be some people that doesn't think any of those are good strategies, so I'm sure they prepared something to go over. So if they don't answer the question, no big deal. And Mo, lastly to you on that question.
Gotcha. I have a lot of the same information that like Freddie spoke about. So for the sake of time, I'm going to kind of reduce my list. First one I have is like, the one I wanted to mention was transitioning from fossil fuels over to renewable sources. You know what I mean? Sometimes we talk about like adding on, but I feel like the transition part is really important. And again, I think that like paying for innovation and, building of the facilities, that's the creation of jobs, you know what I mean? For some communities that need a new market, that need a new industry to be planted in these areas, right? We spoke about improving energy efficiency and then carbon capture and storage. I think there's not one size fits all, and I think that there's different things that we can do, again, kind of like what Jack was saying, in different parts of the country where it's like best fitted. But I think that using sustainable land practices would be really good as well, such as like reforestation, afforestation, and the adoption of sustainable agricultural practices, could help reduce carbon emissions, right? And I feel like this is just like a small piece to help, but again, you know what I mean? I think that any little bit helps, you know what I mean? And it's not going to be harmful, to plant more trees, you know what I mean? And then like have sustainable agricultural practices. And then carbon pricing, I think this is a little more, in line with like government processes that can take place where you incentivize, companies switching to solar power or wind power or geothermal power, or nuclear power, or so on and so forth, right? And then you tax people who don't make the transition. Not saying that this is ideal, but this is a way to help reduce the carbon emissions, which is what the question asked.
Thanks, Mo. Mo?
Yeah, similarly, I think that what is the cost, or maybe not necessarily the cost, but the value of a transition? You know what I mean? Weighing temporary discomfort or throwing out a bunch of money, like Freddie was saying earlier, you know what I mean, for long-term gain, so that we're not throwing pollution into the air that may or may not have, damaging effects, right? Like if we can just avoid the risk altogether and do something a lot cleaner, then I can't speak for everybody, but that's the transition I would make. But yeah, that's all I have.
Thanks, Mo. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on to the third question. How should policymakers balance the economic costs of reducing greenhouse gas emissions against the potential benefit of avoiding the worst impacts of climate change? Or why shouldn't they care about this balance at all? So again, Mo, lastly to you.
Gotcha. Yeah. So yeah, I just really want to focus on that, we should do something, as I've been saying before, taking some action is better than taking no action. And I think that that's really what politicians and policymakers should take into account. Because again, the natural disasters, the floods, the wildfires, the droughts, they've been increasing, and we have the information saying that they've been increasing. If there's anything we can do to mitigate that, in relation to, greenhouse gas emissions, I think we can do that, because those natural disasters lead to social disruptions, displacement, political instability, where people are now looking for refuge. You know what I mean? If there's anything that we can do, anything at all that we can do to mitigate that, I think that we should take those things, because the consequences of doing nothing are far more lasting than if we do something, or if we do something small, right? So I think that policymakers should prioritize the implementation of policies that help transition low carbon economy, while ensuring that the economic burden is not disproportionately on low income or marginalized communities. I do want to make that really clear, right? This can be achieved through policies that provide support and incentives for the adoption of cleaner technologies or energy efficient practices, as well as policies that address, the social equities that come with job creation and access to affordable energy. Yeah, that's all I have.
Mo, let's go to you. Any comments on the third question?
Yeah, I was just talking about making profit. I think that somebody's always going to make a profit off of something, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And I do want to reduce, I guess, I bring up CO2 emissions because that's kind of where the question led me. But when we talk about fossil fuels and coal, they also come with pollution. The sun isn't going to pollute anything. Water and wind energy, they're not polluting anything. So I feel like even if we don't know that, CO2 emissions are going to make things worse or better, you know what I mean? If we can be at a neutral point, why not be at a neutral point? You know what I mean? With clean energy resources. So yeah.
Thanks, Mo. Appreciate it. All right, coming to the last question. This is great, guys. I appreciate the conversation. We've all stayed level-headed, and I really appreciate that. So we'll go to the last question. What are the ethical implications of either failing to take action to address climate change, particularly for future generations, or taking action that disproportionately impacts vulnerable populations? And lastly, over to you, Mo.
Gotcha. So I want to say that climate change is the classic example of tragedy of the commons, where individuals or group act in their own self-interest and they collectively deplete shared resources. Fossil fuels are a finite resource, and burning them releases pollution into the atmosphere, right? Which can cause climate change. The cost of burning fossil fuels are borne to everybody, right? Whether it be in the water or the air we breathe, and the benefits are actually accrued by few. Not everybody has access to a car, not everybody has access to vehicles, but we can say that these things may have a global effect, right? Or even to a particular area of a continent, right? And failing to take action on climate change is perpetuating this tragedy. And now I want to talk about environmental racism, which is what Freddie had brought up. Climate change already disproportionately affects marginalized communities, including low-income communities and communities of colors. These communities are more likely to be exposed by by environmental hazards, and they have fewer resources to actually adapt and to fix them when it comes to climate change. By failing to take action on this, we are perpetuating environmental racism. And then when it comes to intergenerational solidarity, I personally believe, again, that I want to do as much as I can for future generations. And I believe like the year was what, 2100? If somebody was born today, they'll be 77 at the year, 2100. That's not that far away. I have grandparents who are 80 years old, right? And taking action on climate change is not just about protecting future generations, but about building solidarity between us, right? Like, I'm passing the torch to you. I want you to have this. This is what I've done in my day, and I'm passing it over to you. What is it that you're going to do, right? And I believe that I have that, with my ancestors in the generations of the past. They've paved the way for me to do the work that I'm doing right now. By taking on climate change, we are demonstrating that we care about the world and what we are creating for the future generations. This sense of solidarity can help build a stronger sense of community and shared purpose. And I also feel like it's a snowball effect, right? I don't think that all of this is going to happen at once. You know what I mean? Like it's a growth, it's a movement. Fred was saying like one step is like becomes 1,000, that becomes 100,000, that becomes 1,000,000, that becomes 1,000,000,000, that becomes 1,000,000,000,000. It's not going to happen all at once. And then there's this constant effort of editing and pruning and finding out and researching on how it's going to become, because we have no way of knowing what it's going to look like in 100 years, right? But to me, I feel comfort in knowing that I tried something, I put something out there that future generations are going to be able to come. And one other thing, as climate change worsens, we can expect more extreme weather events, as stated before. And I just really want to talk about, displacement and exacerbating refugee crises, right? Failing to take action on climate change would mean that we don't take responsibility for these things, right? And our actions have impact on the world. That's without a doubt. I don't think that we can say like when we chop down trees, that doesn't mean anything for the nature or the biosystems that are existing there. And if we're just cognizant of what we're doing, not saying that we have to take perfect action, but to think about, right? How is this going to have an effect, and try to make some type of action around those type of things. But yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Mo. All right, so we're going to go to the final comment section, and then we'll go right into the conclusions. On to you, Mo.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I want to say that like I really respect everybody here, and then like the group of information that has come. And when it comes to like the words of like indoctrination or like scaring people, I just want to look at the information and say that we've all like gathered different forms of information, and we're looking at the information based on our lived experiences, you know what I mean? And our perspectives like influence that and how we're coming at it and the angle that we're taking. Because again, I don't feel that the information is necessarily scary. But when I get the information, I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm a person who likes to take action, take initiative and find out if there's something that I can do. What am I going to do? I'm not very much like an idle hands type of person. You know what I mean? I think idle hands is like devil's business or some type of like saying like that. Yeah. But yeah, I want to stop there.
Sounds good, Mo. No, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Great. All right. So we're reaching to the end where everyone's going to have their last second just to give a brief conclusion on, their points. Feel free to throw in anything that anyone has said here, and then we'll end with that. And Mo, on to you. Closing statements, buddy.
Gotcha. Yeah. So my closing statement that I have is that, in conclusion, the debate around climate change it's no longer just a scientific or political issue, but it's an ethical issue with implications for the future of humanity. I'm gonna say it again: if we fail to take action now, our future generations may be at risk at inheriting a world where we say we just didn't care, we weren't sure what to do, and it may look drastically different from what we know today, right? And I feel like we have a responsibility to them, or I feel like I have a responsibility, to the future generations, that will be coming from me, so that they can inherit an habitable planet, right? Just as our ancestors ensured that we had something like that. And failing to address that means that we're not fulfilling our part of that responsibility, again, when it comes to passing the torch. The good news that I feel like, again, like Freddie was saying, I do feel like we do agree on a lot of the things that we were saying. And like, for the people who do decide to do things, we have options available. You know, there's an abundance of options of what we can do and what we can't do, and where we want to pour and focus our energies and our attentions when it comes to implementing policies or promoting sustainable development. Growing forward, I feel like if we do want to come together, this will require some type of political will, public engagement, and cooperation between the nations. And it will require us to make difficult choices and to take bold action, which I feel like is just a part of life. You know what I mean? I feel like, you know, if there's not a little bit of risk involved, you know what I mean? Like I again, this is what I feel like, you know, I don't feel like I've truly lived a life, you know, where I'm facing my fears, I'm looking at the things that are scary, and saying there's something I can do about it, and taking my agency into my own hands, right? Yeah, I feel like this is a conversation about values and our responsibilities to future generations. And just like before I hop off, like Jack, I'm not going to say you necessarily like ruffled my feathers with the indoctrination statement, but I just found it interesting. You know, I haven't shared a lot of personal information about myself. But I go to universities and I teach seminars about equity, diversity, and inclusion. So, you know, I have a robust amount of knowledge when it comes to words like racism, you know, and indoctrination and capitalism and white supremacy, you know, and oppression, and how these things are operated and how they're communicated, you know, not just now, but throughout the ages, you know, and that just like piqued my interest. Yeah, and I just wanted to bring a little bit of attention to that, because I think it's our perspectives, like I was saying before, the people where we are, the environments we grown up with, who we were from children, our parents, so on and so forth. We have these glasses on, which is beautiful because we all see the world in a different way, and we all take actions differently. And the way that we see and analyze information is different from the next person. But yeah, thank you. That's my concluding statement.
Thank you, Mo. I really appreciate that. Yeah.